Well, with the excitement and, let's be quite honest, the chaos of our magnificent wedding now behind us, it's time for us to have a look at all our existing restoration projects, where they're up to, and also share with you the projects that you are going to see us start in the next 12 months here at Pernon. So come with me on a grand tour of the chateau. So let's start by giving an update of where we are at with the restoration of the chateau roof and facades. We have been here for just over 5 years now. The first year was spent doing diagnostic studies and planning the huge amount of work required for the complex restoration of the chateau facades and its magnificent roof. And as you can see behind me, there is still scaffolding in place, so we are still not at the end of that work. And you can also see though that just before the wedding, some of the scaffolding on the western wing here was removed to reveal the restoration work of Pernon's facades and roof. But there is still work to be completed here on the western wing with the roof, the stonework and the render. And so let's go and have a look at exactly where this work is up to. Well, up here on the highest point of the scaffolding, our roofers still have a huge task ahead of them. They still have to finish the western side. They have reached the dormers, but they still have a long way to go. You may remember that this section of the roof had a canopy over it. That canopy was removed about a month ago to give them access to the top of the roof. The faîtage, the large beam that joins the two sections of the roof when they reach the apex, has been restored by our carpenters. And then once the roofers reach the top with all the tiles, then there is a copper casing and then a lead casing that sits over the top of that. The final touch is the finials, those beautiful balls that sit on top of the dormers. Behind me is the completed eastern wing and central dome of the chateau's roof, and you can also see sitting on the dormer here Louis XV, Louis XV. Now this dormer is the window to Pernon's incredible billiard room. We cannot go in there at the moment because it's all barricaded up whilst those windows are actually being restored. But inside the billiard room, our stonemasons are working on the restoration of the render. It has that incredible domed ceiling, but the most exciting stage of the restoration of the billiard room is the restoration of the billiard table itself. It's the 18th century billiard table that was built for Pernon. It is the oldest existing billiard table that has been found in France. Its restoration is going to be such an incredible moment for not only Pernon really, but for the history of billiards. The restoration of that is underway at the moment, and of course, as with everything here at Pernon, we will keep you updated here. After living here for 5 years now and watching the work of our incredible artisans over the last 4 years, I think I have to say that the most complex work is that of our stonemasons. Their work seems to be never finished. Right now they are working on the restoration of the stonework and the render here on actually the ground floor of the chateau. We are one level up on the scaffolding because underneath us is the basement. And so you can see Seb is removing the deteriorated stone. That stone will either be grafted or replaced. And they are also working on the restoration of the render at the same time. Once this level is finished, they will then be able to start working on the basement. That includes the restoration of the stonework. Like everywhere here at Pernon, the stones that can be saved will be saved. Some stones will be grafted, but as you can see behind me, there is a pile of stones ready to replace the stones which are too deteriorated to keep. The very final stage of the restoration of this base section of the chateau is to complete the render, and that is done once all the stonework has been restored. Where are we up to with the restoration of Pernon's spectacular bridge? This is the bridge that crosses the moat on the southern side of the chateau. When we arrived, the stonework was in terrible condition, terribly deteriorated. A lot of the work has now been completed to restore the stonework. All the coping stones have been replaced. None of those original stones could be saved. They were far too deteriorated. The paving has been taken up, the level has been redone, the surface has been waterproofed. It still needs a second product for the waterproofing, and then the pavers will be laid back down. The stairs have been completely restored, as you can see. A question that we get all the time is, what is the future of the lions? Well, unfortunately, the lions are far too deteriorated to restore. They have been cleaned. They have had a product put on them to protect them from further deterioration. But in the future, what we would love to do is to recreate these lions. For the moment, however, they will stay as they are, guarding the spectacular bridge. The chateau has never had external lighting, and we are currently working with our partners at Corston to come up with a lighting solution for the facades of the chateau. This is an incredibly exciting project for us, and we will take you on the journey of lighting the chateau for the very first time. This is the eastern side of the dry moat. It was always a dry moat. It was never intended to have water in it. It provides access to the basement for staff to access the kitchens. It also has 5 cellars in the stone walls, a well, a basin for washing, storage and latrines. And the restoration of the stonework of all of these walls is now completed. The finishing touches on the far wall were completed days before the wedding, but this is only half of the moat.
The second half of this project is the restoration of Pernon's western dry moat wall, which you can see behind me. Here at basement level, the condition of this wall doesn't look too bad at all, but once you see it from above, you can see the huge buckle in it. And if we left it unrestored, even for another few years, this wall would start to fail. So the restoration work will follow the same pathway as the eastern dry moat wall. They will effectively disassemble the entire wall, they'll rebuild it, and they'll put in place a drainage system to make sure that the wall is protected for centuries to come. Now, this work will start very soon, and those of you who are here during the Journée du Patrimoine in September, you may well see some of that work underway.
There are 3 doors here on the terrace of the northern entrance of the chateau. This is the main entrance to the chateau. There are the main doors. There is a door to the Marquis's bureau or his office, and then this false door, because remember here Château de Pernon is a neoclassical chateau, so everything is about symmetry, and so this door is purely here to mirror the other door and create a very lovely symmetric entrance. The stonework needs to be restored, the faux door itself needs to be restored, painted, the woodwork restored, and all this work is going to happen when the scaffolding has come down on the western wing.
So this is Château de Pernon's spectacular 1812 gate, and work on the restoration of this gate will begin after the Journée du Patrimoine later this year. Now, why is it called the 1812 gate? Well, if we look carefully on the gate itself, beneath the Marquis's crown, we can see the date 1812, and it tells us when the ornamental gates, the metal gates that we can see behind us, were first constructed. Now, the works on this gate will be funded by the support we've received from our Patreon and YouTube subscribers. So a big shout out to everyone who's been part of providing the funds to support this work. Now, what will occur? Well, the stonework is actually in terrible condition, so our stonemasons will have to do work to restore that stonework. The iron gates themselves have really never been addressed since they were first put in place. So it will be a big project to restore and then to paint the intricate ironwork that you can see behind me. The diagnostic study for this project has already been completed, and that told us some fascinating things about the evolution of these gates. This has always been the main entrance to the chateau, but when it was first constructed, there were no ornamental gates in place, just stone columns. And over time that has changed, and in fact today the stonework is so delicate that it's now impossible to even open the main gates themselves. So this work is very important, and it's Flick and my dream that we can return this to being the main entrance to the chateau, the very first impression that visitors will have of this magnificent estate.
So things are about to get incredibly exciting here on the inside of the chateau, because in February next year we are going to start the restoration work on the principal rooms of the ground floor of the chateau, and that includes the restoration of the main entrance here, the antechamber, the grand salon, the bibliothèque, and a lovely dressing room behind the bibliothèque. So let me take you on a tour of each of these spaces. First, here in the main entrance, what work is going to be completed? Well, you've seen that we've started removing the blue paint that was put over the tuffeau stone here in the early 20th century. This is a lead paint, it's not original to the chateau. The original decor of this entrance was very light and bright and airy, and it was just the tuffeau stone. So this space was modified and the blue paint added, and then also these skirting boards were added, which will be removed. Once all the blue paint has been removed, the stonework will then receive a harmonising finish to really finish this space off, and it is going to be incredibly beautiful, something we are very excited about. Let's go and have a look at the other rooms. Here in the antechamber, we have already put on display the 2 original busts from Château de Pernon's roof. These were the busts that were discarded and replicated and now sit up on the roof. But I'm not going to go into that in detail. We've done that in other tours. But let's have a talk about what's going to happen during the restoration of this space. So here, the plasterwork on the ceiling will be restored, the cornices will be restored. The lead paint that you can see that is chipping will be removed and the paintwork redone. The floor will actually be replaced. This is not the original floor. The floor in this room in the 18th century when the chateau was constructed was the pierre de Bourgogne and the slate that you see in the entrance, and that carries the whole way through to the grand salon, which then starts with the wooden floorboards. So that will be replaced, which will see this floor and this space returned to exactly how it was in the 18th century. Let's go and have a look at the grand salon.
So this is Pernon's Grand Salon, or its principal reception room, and this will be restored as part of the works on the western wing of the ground floor of the chateau. Now, as Flick has already explained, the parquetry, the wooden parquetry in this room is original, so it will be restored and retained. The wood panelling around the room, as well as the artworks and the plasterwork, will all be restored as part of this project. And this incredible fireplace, it's a Louis XV fireplace, so it's actually older than the chateau itself. It's made from a beautiful Flanders marble. It will also be retained as part of this project. Now, this is one of the few rooms that has changed since the chateau was first constructed at the end of the 18th century. Now, normally at Pernon, we try and take things back to the way they originally were when the chateau was first constructed. But this Grand Salon is a rare example of where we will actually embrace changes that have been made to the chateau since it was originally built. And that's because the changes that have been made in this room to take it from a Louis XVI neoclassical style to a Louis XV Rococo style are now actually part of the story of the chateau's evolution itself. And so, in consultation with our heritage architect, we've decided to embrace and to keep the changes that have been made to this room over the evolution of the chateau's life. Now let's go and have a look at the chateau's library, the bibliothèque, and see some of the work that will be occurring there.
The bibliothèque is accessed via the Grand Salon, and the restoration of this room will be completed at the same time as the Grand Salon. And so here the plasterwork in the ceiling will be restored, and the plasterwork on the cornices will be restored. All the paintwork will be restored, all the wooden boiserie, so the wooden panelling that sits on all the walls of this room will be restored. In this room, unlike the Grand Salon, the skirting boards actually have their original 18th century faux marble finish, and so they will not be redone. That will simply be protected, or small restoration works will be done where required. But we have a little secret in the restoration of this room, where we are going to reintroduce one of the original 18th century features of the chateau that was discovered abandoned here at the chateau. And so that is a very exciting project for us when we start doing the finishing touches and the furnishings in this room, so stay tuned for that. This room is entered via the bibliothèque. It is a small dressing room with an absolutely spectacular original 18th century wallpaper. This is the only surviving example of this wallpaper in situ anywhere in the world. And the restoration of this room will involve returning the layout of this room to its original state. So a wardrobe was put in here, which actually sits in front of some of the wallpaper, and we're hoping that when we remove this wardrobe that we will then expose the entire panel of this wonderful wallpaper, and hopefully it's been well protected. But the wallpaper does need some restoration work, where you can see there's a lot of water damage, and then down here there's a small hole that will be restored as well. Up here on the first floor, we have lots of projects that you are going to see us working on. The first is actually the completion of this sitting room. We furnished it temporarily during the wedding. It's where I got dressed with my beautiful flower girls, and as you can see, my wedding dress is still here. And actually, we have had a lot of questions about whether my wedding dress will be on display during the Journée du Patrimoine, during our open days in September. The answer to that is yes. And so if you are visiting us for the Journée du Patrimoine, you will be able to see this beautiful dress that was created by an Australian designer, Tony Matateski, who is also a friend of mine that I went to university with. But this room is about to go through its next stage to bring it to its completion, which is the installation of the 18th century style bookcases, the Louis XVI bookcases that were designed by our architect, that are currently being made, and we cannot wait to have them in and then put the finishing touches on this room. But here on the first floor, you will also see us working on the completion of first floor laundry. We will start new bedrooms. In the next 12 months, we will certainly start working on the electrical work and the plumbing for the western wing of the chateau, and I'll show you a few spaces that we'll start working on in the next 12 months. This is the first floor laundry. This is not the principal laundry for the chateau, it's simply to serve the first floor. We've already completed a huge amount of work here. All the electricals and plumbing have gone in, the plastering has gone in, and our next stage is the cabinetry, and we are working on that at the moment, and then we will do the painting and finish this room off. This is a small bedroom, it's a single bedroom. Behind it is the dressing room and washroom that we completed the restoration of just before the wedding, moments before the wedding, for Tim's mother to be comfortable during the wedding. We are going to start work on the restoration of this room. What that will include is the restoration of the plaster of the ceiling, the cornices, the boiserie, the wood panelling, and then most excitingly, and my favourite thing as always, the wallpaper. The largest bedroom here on the first floor of the chateau was affectionately called our fabric room. This is where we stored all the original fabrics that we discovered here at the chateau, and now it is being used for storage of the original 18th century beds. It's also got the wallpaper panels of the original 18th century wallpapers from various rooms that were removed during the restoration to protect them from the leaking roof. And as you can see, there's a lot of work to do in this room before we even actually start any restoration work in the room. Originally a dressing room, later turned into a bathroom, and now not much more than a pile of rubble. This will be a dressing room. Well, it may not look like much at the moment except a storage room, but this is going to be the principal bathroom for the first floor, and work here will start once all the plumbing and electrical work has been completed on this, the western wing of the chateau's first floor. We have not shared this room with you before. Originally it was a maid's room. It is positioned on the way up the staircase to the second floor, but it's actually on the same level as the first floor. So you can see we've started work here, we've pulled up the floor, and it is going to be a beautiful tisanerie, so a sitting room, tea room for the first floor. We need to open a doorway into the first floor, and then obviously there's a lot of work to do in this room before it becomes anything close to being usable. The rooms that I've shown you are just the first floor rooms. We're not even looking yet at the work to be done on the second floor. So as you can see, a huge amount of work happening to finish the roof itself and the facades, and then for us to progress our projects here on the inside of the chateau. But we also get a lot of questions about some of our buildings around the domain. So let's go and have a look at those and where the planning for the restoration of those buildings is currently at.
So we get asked lots of questions about this building. This is Pernon's early 19th century orangery. Now, what's an orangery? Well, it's a building like a glass house for storing citrus trees during the Northern European cold winter. The question we get asked most often is, are we going to restore it? Well, the short answer is yes. We absolutely love this building and we're absolutely determined to restore it. When we first arrived, the building was overgrown with trees both inside and out, and we set to work cutting those trees down. Now that bought us some time. The building itself is now basically protected despite its fragility. We've heritage listed it. The next step will be a diagnostic study so that we can develop a plan to carry out a restoration, but in truth it's just not our highest priority. We've got so many other projects inside the chateau, and with some of the other fragile buildings around the estate, we really have to tackle many of those first. So unfortunately it's going to be some time before we get around to restoring the orangery behind me. But I suppose that begs the broader question of what's happening with the parks and gardens themselves. Over the last few years, we've been developing a master plan for the parks and gardens for the entire estate. And that's been done in conjunction with Ian Barker, an Australian landscape designer, and he'll be back this September to put the final touches on the plan that he's been developing. And we can't wait to share that with all of you.
Behind me is Pernon's enormous western outbuilding. This building is 60 metres long and houses the chapel, the stables and the tack room. The building is in a terrible condition. It is sinking and has an enormous lean to this side, and as you can see behind me, there is a support structure that was constructed that is currently holding this building up. The restoration of this building is definitely a priority for us. It's a huge concern for us. It is not a project that you will see starting in the next 12 months because a solution needs to be found to address the stability issue of the building before any work can be completed. That is a continual discussion with our architect, and when the right solution is found, we will then be able to start planning and budgeting the restoration of this building. So for the moment, it is all about protecting it against further decay, and so you will see us start some work on repairing the roof. There are sections of the roof where the tiles have actually fallen off, and so water is coming in, and so we hope before winter to complete that work to ensure that it is protected during winter and protected until a solution can be found to save this building. Behind me is Pernon's eastern outbuilding. The design of this building exactly mirrors the western outbuilding, but its functionality is completely different. In here we find the original 18th century laundry, the original 18th century boulangerie, which is where during our open days we use the bread oven to cook traditional bread, and it is a knockout success every year. But also in the attic of this building is where we find the magnificent oak frame in the style of Philibert Delorme, the Renaissance architect who created this style of building oak frames for roofs that create a beautiful open space with a lovely arced shape. It is magnificent, it is rare, and it is absolutely priceless and needs to be saved and protected. We are hoping in the next 12 months that the diagnostic study for this building will be completed, which will then allow us to plan the restoration. In the meantime, for us, it's all about protecting and saving this building from any further deterioration. So you will see us do roof repairs because there are a lot of leaks in the roof at the moment. And so there you have it, a look at all our existing restoration projects that are currently underway here at Pernon, and also a look at our planning and the projects that you can expect to see us commencing in the next 12 months, plus some others that are currently not scheduled to commence but are projects that you will see in the future and we frequently receive questions about, so we address those for you today as well.
So we're back from our honeymoon, we're raring to go, and we can't wait to share our progress with you. Now this week we celebrated the Fête Nationale, Bastille Day, the national holiday, here in our local village. And so for this week's exclusive Patreon and YouTube members video, we share those celebrations with you and look a little bit at the origins of that national holiday.
And if you ever want to see how Tim performs in the sack, this is your chance. Otherwise, if you'd like to follow the restoration of Château de Pernon more closely, we post an exclusive weekly video for our Patreon and YouTube members. We post frequent updates on Instagram. Otherwise, just hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the hype button, the new button that YouTube have introduced this week, and we will see you again next week.
Tim in the sack, that's a frightening thought.